The joint public hearing of the Salem City Council and the Planning Board was held in person in the Salem City Council chambers, City Hall, 93 Washington Street, second floor, Salem, Massachusetts, on Monday, June 24th, 2024 at 6:30 p.m. in accordance with Chapter 40A, Section 5 of the Massachusetts General Law, for the purpose of discussing the zoning ordinance amendment relative to business neighborhood zoning, Section 3.1, Table of Principal Accessory Use Regulations. Notice this hearing was posted on June 18th, 2024, and advertised in the Salem News on June 10th, 2024, and June 17th, 2024. Absent are Councilors Davis and Varela. Councilor Varela has recused himself. Councilor Hapworth presiding. I'll kick it over to Chair Grissett. I'm sorry, to Chair Reader to take attendance for the Planning Board.
Present.
And Planning Board, just make sure you speak into that microphone as much as possible so that they pick it up at home.
Zachary. Present. Humphrey. Sarah Tarbett.
Present.
Jonathan Burke.
Present.
Josh Turiel.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Also with us are Robin Lee from the Planning Department and James Wheelock, the Assistant City Solicitor. Also note, former Councilor Arthur Sargent has joined us. In the year 2024, an ordinance to amend an ordinance relative to business neighborhood zoning be it ordained that the City Council of the City of Salem as follows. Section 1, Section 3.1, Table of Principal and Accessory Use Regulations and Zoning Ordinance is hereby amended by A, replacing the N in the B1 zoning district column with a BA for 2 commercial uses, commercial recreation indoor restaurant with service for alcoholic beverages. B, replacing the commercial use text retail store, except department stores not elsewhere set forth with retail or grocery store except department stores not elsewhere set forth. C, replacing N in B1 zoning district column with Y for accessory use of family daycare small. And D, replacing N in the B1 zoning district column with a BA for accessory use of home occupation. Section 2 of this ordinance shall take effect as provided by city charter. So with us we have City Solicitor James, or Assistant City Solicitor James Wheelock, who's going to, I guess, give a brief presentation or talk up here and allow councilors and planning board members to ask any questions. The mayor could not be here with us today, so if there's anything we can't answer or we need to take away, we can get it back to you all at a later date.
Sorry? Is it? Oh, the podium.
That's normally Councilor Cohen's job. That's good.
Mr. President. My name is James Wheelock. I'm the Assistant City Solicitor of Salem. This proposed amendment came from the Planning Department's Amanda Giancola and the Mayor's Office, essentially addressing some of the needs in the B1 Business Neighborhood District, adding the ability for restaurants with alcohol that's a use that's already in existence in this zone. There are examples of it presently in the zone operating. So it allows that by special permit. It allows for small neighborhood grocery stores that are walkable from the neighborhood. It allows for, by special permit, it allows for small family daycare, which is already allowed in neighboring residential zones. And it allows for home occupation by special permit, which seems consistent with the business neighborhood zone. And with that, are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Wheelock? Councilor Watson-Felt.
Thank you, President. I was hoping not to go first because I do have a mint in my mouth and I apologize. Mr. Wheelock, could you give I don't know if this data is available, but as you mentioned, there are instances of special circumstances where some of these businesses already exist in B1 neighborhoods in Salem. Can you give any data around the number of those businesses that have been approved, or are they, how prevalent are they? How familiar would we be with them if we were walking down our own neighborhood streets?
I don't have data on that.
Okay, but that there are noted exceptions that are already in existence.
Yes, there are. I believe there are restaurants with alcohol in the B1 district already. They're, I believe, grandfathered in.
Okay. Thank you. I think it would be helpful to have a sense of how prevalent that those businesses are, if that's something that is possible for before our next conversation. I don't know if that should be a planning department request or a legal department request, but I'm just going to offer that. Thanks.
Would be fair to say that the Derby Street, so you think of two B1 zones, the Derby Street neighborhood and Vinnon Square, that Vinnon Square would be a neighborhood that I think is probably completely compliant within the current zoning, and Derby Square is one that would be a lot of non-conforming uses, such as restaurants that serve alcohol, et cetera.
I'm sorry, it's North Street a part of the B1 as well? Is that correct? Yes, thank you. I'm going to bring up my own zoning map. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Councilor Gerslow.
Thank you, Chair. Not being on the committee. How did this come about? Like, what was the planning department, what was the thinking behind this? What was the reason they were actually wanting to change this?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not from the planning department. I believe it was just to address some of the needs for the business neighborhood zone.
Can any of the planning department members explain this? Well, committee members over there? Board, I'm sorry, can any of the planning board members explain this?
The planning board did not, we're not partners for this. This is a planning initiative.
So there is correspondence from the mayor when this was submitted. I'm not sure if you have a copy of that. Okay.
Any further questions from the council? I'll turn over to acting chair Reader to cover questions from the planning board.
Is there anyone on the planning board who has follow-up questions? Seeing none, it's back to you.
Okay. We'll move on to, before we do that, any further questions from the council? I assume not. I'll take away questions for examples of, I think it was examples of non-conforming numbers. Yeah. Numbers. And the origin of the ordinance, I think Councilor Gerslow wanted to see some more information on. We'll move to public comment now, or the public comment portion of the hearing here. So those appearing in favor, if you're here in the chamber, please make your way to the podium. Those appearing in opposition, please make your way to the podium. We'll move to the online comment after the in-person comment has completed.
I got it, yeah. Good evening. My name is T.C. Riley Goggin. I live at 9 Wisteria Street. And I am not in favor of the change in the ward. What comes first? Most of you think I'm going to say that the chicken or the egg. I'm not. I'm going to tell you a little story about up in West Peavy, I believe, or was it South? There was a couple of pig farms and lots of land around. And people were looking for land and they were looking to build. So they built up there. And after a very short period of time, they decided that they didn't really like living near these little pig farms because there was a certain smell that emanated from the area. So they set about to change it. You know, when you move into a neighborhood, you move into it to become part of it. You don't move into it to make all the changes. If somebody moved into Derby Street down there and they wanted to buy a restaurant, And when they moved in, they knew that the restaurant did not have what they called a liquor license. So they set about to change it. Now, it's one thing to change something in one area. We call that spot zoning. I don't think we allow that here in the city of Salem. What's going to happen with this one? They are not going through the correct process as far as I'm concerned. But I know that there is a gentleman here tonight that I have great respect for, who did a great deal of work with Mark Grabowski, who was hired by the city of Salem a number of years ago to go page by page and line by line with our zoning laws. And that man that's here this evening is a former city councilor. And right now, I believe most of you know him, right? Sitting over here to my left. I don't think I have to introduce him, so I won't. But, you know, right now, I'm asking you, please listen to him, not with one ear, but with two ears. And what I want you to keep in mind is what I see here and what I feel about it. The West Peabody little farms up there, that there was a certain smell from. I also feel that right now, what's going on here is a certain smell too. And I also, my last comment will be that, you know, if you want to really and truly have open government, safe government, then protect it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else appearing in opposition?
Thank you. Thank you, City Council, Madam City Clerk, Planning Board. Before I get started, the only instance I know of a liquor license in B1 in my lifetime is Dottie and Ray's got a home petition liquor license on North Street. And the City Council did that erroneously. I don't think they really looked into the zoning when they did it. I ended up being the only City Council who voted against that for that and some other reasons. But that's the only instance I know of. And with all due respect to the Assistant City Solicitor, I think there needs to be a lot more research if we're going to find other ones. But again, something going on that's not supposed to be going on, that's not business neighborhood, that's not neighborhood friendly. Business neighborhood is supposed to serve the neighborhood. It's not supposed to serve the whole city at large because it buffers the neighborhood. And if we go and use, as we zone forward 10, 20, 30 years in the future, we're going to have grandfathered uses. We can't just have something say, well, we just zoned you out of business, you have to go out of business. I used the example last time of 2 leather factories on Irving Street where I lived in North Salem. They were zoned out in the 1960s in an R2 neighborhood. But we're a generous city and we care about our business. So we didn't say to them, just go out of business. They were allowed to do business until they themselves went out of business. You know, the economy set them out of business. Leather factories closed. So, you know, in the Italian neighborhood, when I lived down there, we had a chicken slaughtering operation. Didn't smell very good when the wind was blowing the right way. We had Surrett batteries where Maria's place is now. We had thermal circuits where now there's a storage facility. Those things were zoned out, but they weren't asked to leave tomorrow. Time went on and they moved on, and 10, 20, 30 years later, things got better. And all of those, with help from the city, tax breaks and things like that, are now paying more taxes than the businesses that were there. At times we worry about losing a business, but from Pickering Wharf, from what it used to be to an oil terminal to now, all those places that went out of business and changed are paying way more taxes today, even if you count inflation, than they were before. So we don't worry about grandfather and things. But we can't use, what I'm getting at is we can't use a grandfathered use to go forward and say, you know, there's 2 leather factories on Irving Street. Let's put that back in R2 zone. You know, there's thermal circuits here doing circuitry or a battery factory in an R2 that's grandfathered. Let's allow that in all R2, they're grandfathered. We wouldn't do that. We move forward, slow but sure, we move forward and we get there. So putting this liquor license in the B1 zone is even worse than that. These things aren't grandfathered. I believe one was put there by mistake. So we can't use one mistake to affect every neighborhood in the city. We have to protect our neighborhoods. During my 22 years on the city council, I studied zoning to help protect the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Then I spent 8 years off and on the zoning review committee with Mark Grabowski and picking his brain and listening to him. And he's the man who wrote the book on zoning. And I don't pretend to speak for him by any means. I'll go down the list of things that are proposed. B1, we discussed many of these topics at length on the zoning review committee. The liquor license. Restaurants in B1 were already an issue. B1 zoning abuts residential zoning. Residential use has more deliveries, more trucks, more refrigerator motors on the trucks, messier dumpsters, and it's the back of the restaurants that abut the residential neighborhoods in the B1 zoning. There are also more employees than there would be at a retail store. More smoke breaks out back, now more cell phone conversations for neighbors to hear. All of this was allowed until 11 o'clock. Cleanup can last until midnight, maintenance, rug cleaning, vent cleaning, all that can last through the night sometimes. For these reasons, we talked about taking restaurants out of B1, but we decided to keep them in. But we also had a lot of decision about not allowing liquor licenses in the B1 zone, because liquor license would bring more activity, later hours of operation, 12 midnight to 1 a.m. closing, and entertainment license into the neighborhoods. That would allow more of the activity at the rear of the building, trash removal, cell phone conversation, etc., to go on till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. Excuse me, I just want to get my water. Some of the B2 restaurants with liquor licenses already abutted residential neighborhoods. We knew about these issues from their neighbors, and we didn't want to recreate this in the B1 zoning. That was the thinking there. Also, home rule petition liquor licenses were being used to help make the downtown restaurant scene more vibrant. As they became more popular and plentiful, we didn't want them to spread into the neighborhoods in Salem. And I believe that's the driving force behind this. A lot of these other things we're talking about, I think the liquor license is really the main thing, and the rest of it is just kind of camouflage, if you ask me. On the A2, commercial recreation use. Seems okay, but this was left out of the B1 zone for good reason. Much of the discussion, because a lot of us were YMCA members at the time, centered around parking. We knew how difficult it was to find a parking space to go to the Y downtown. People who would work out, spend an hour or two, sometimes more there working out and socializing. That ties up a parking space for a long time, and that would be tough in the B1 zone. People who retail shop don't take up a space that long. Parking for commercial recreation use would spill out into the neighborhoods, and that's what we're trying to avoid. Commercial recreation use also nowadays sometimes comes with loud music, as of some of these boxing clubs and things like that. Okay, now, adding grocery stores to B1. It seems okay again, but a grocery store is not your neighborhood market. Grocery stores, stop and shop, market basket stores, etc. The parking needed and the impact on a neighborhood does not fit into a B1 zone. It's more B2 zoning with the larger parking lots. They were allowed at one time. They were eliminated from B1 zoning before my time on the council. Those that existed were grandfathered and allowed to stay. I had one near my neighborhood, the old Stop and Shop. It's not your typical deliveries. They had a large number of delivery trucks, most of them 18-wheeler diesel trucks that didn't turn off their motors or their refrigerator motors when they were unloading. They didn't empty a whole truck, as in the cases with a lot of retail stores. Each truck had one product that was delivered one pallet at a time to many different stores, instead of a full truck with many different products. That's why there were so many trucks. They also delivered a lot at night to get ready for the next day. When they moved their store and Staples moved in, things became quieter. There were less deliveries and none in the middle of the night. Even though they were grandfathered uses and there were quality of life issues, the neighborhoods of Salem accepted this, as they always do. And they knew things would improve sooner or later as time went by. Please don't add grocery stores back into the B1 zoning. They have B2 zoning to locate into, and B2 zoning is clearly a better place for them to operate. C and D, family daycare and accessory use of home occupation. On the daycare, again, it seems like, yeah, put it in. But the discussion came up about, have you ever been gone by a school at closing time when cars are double and triple parked trying to get the kids? The B1 zones, a lot of them abut Boston Street, Bridge Street, North Street. And if they had a daycare, there was real worry about that double parking and safety issues that would cause and traffic concerns. And then the other one is the accessory use of home occupation. We're advised by Mark Bobrowski on this and many issues to add the uses into our zoning that would be allowed the way the state would allow them, and to come in line with the state. So what we did is we put in these two uses where the state already allows them. So I would say unless the state law has changed, please keep them where the state law currently allows them by right. Okay. In closing, the zoning review committee, led by zoning lawyer and expert attorney Mark Bobrowski, essentially wrote the book on zoning, discussed our zoning laws and rules at length for a number of years with many public meetings. Neighborhood groups and business leaders, along with a cross-section of Salem citizens and organizations, debated this and other zoning rules at length. The planning board and the city council discussed, debated, and held public meetings, then voted on it. Please help protect the quality of life in our neighborhoods by denying these changes and keeping B1 zoning as is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Sargent. Anyone else? There's nobody else here in person. We'll move online. So those appearing in favor, if you're appearing in favor via Zoom, please raise your hand and we'll allow you to speak. You're appearing in opposition via Zoom, please raise your hand and we will allow you to speak. Seeing none. Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. I move to close the public hearing.
Councilor Morcello moves the public hearing be closed. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. Councilor Morcello.
Thank you, President. I move that the matter be referred to the planning board for their review and recommendation.
Councilor Morcello moves to refer the matter to the planning board for their review and recommendation. All those in favor? Any opposed? Matter carries. And we will move to the planning board. Chair Reader, just ensure that you close the public hearing first.
That's exactly what I wanted to do. Roll call to close the public, starting with Zachary. Yes. For Reader, yes. Tom Fury?
Yes.
Sarah Tarbett?
Yes.
Josh Turiel?
Yes.
Fury?
I believe you can, if you want to adjourn on your side, you can do that as well.
Sure. Oh, roll call for adjournment. Zachary? Yes. For Reader, yes. Tom Fury? Yes. Sarah Tarbett?
Yes.
Jonathan Burke? Josh Turiel?
Yes.
You all right?
And Councilor Prosnewski.
Also move for adjournment by the city council.
Councilor Prosnewski moves for adjournment. All those in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.